Hi, class. Welcome to week 4. I want to encourage you on the hard work that you've been doing, the quality of the assignments, as well as the engagement in the online discussions. What I want to do as we enter into this week is discuss a few administrative things and then kind of basically introduce uh, week 4, the material for week 4. A few administrative things. One, this week I will post the instructions for the final paper. And the final paper is going to center around you choosing some topic that you're interested in from the ancient Near East. It could be religious, it could be cultural, it could be a literary, and then and then studying, researching that, and then kind of conducting some analysis into how that phenomenon or event or literature or whatever you choose to focus on kind of integrates into our study of the Bible. And so again, I'll post that within the next few days. Please check that. And what I'd like you guys to do is over the course of the next week or two, reflect on your topic, and by the end of next week, have your topic chosen and begin your research. That paper is going to be due by the end of week 10. I want to direct you to, again, the general questions forum. If you have a question that you'd like me to address, whether it's about an assignment or a particular aspect of the course, or simply, a question about material, I do want you to post that in the general questions forum so that everyone can benefit from the response and the engagement. And then I also want to remind you to keep your responses in the online discussions brief. Historically, I've limited these to 3 sentences. What I might do is change that to limit your responses to 150 words. Now, the final part of that response is still going to be a a specific directed question to somebody to help further the discussion. And so keep that in mind as we go forward with our discussions. Now, week 4. Last week we dove into the first half of the second millennium. Week 4 we're going to dive into the middle of the second millennium until and going into the latter half of the second millennium until about 1200 BC. Next week we'll cover the collapse of the ancient Near East, and that happens around 1200 BC. But for this week we're going to cover really the middle portion of the second millennium. As we'll see, the 3 major world powers during this time are the Hittites, the Babylonians, and the Egyptians. And you'll see that there's significant conflict between all 3 of these major powers during this period. We'll also look at the Hittites in particular. We'll read some literature from the Hittites. I also have a video posted of some Hurrian music, again, another people group kind of in the northern and eastern portion of the ancient Near East. You'll look at some Hittite Israelite cultural parallels, and then again read some Hittite texts. And a comparative reading will be on ritual texts. And so looking at some of the Hittite ritual texts and some ritual texts from the Hebrew Bible. One of the things that I do want to point out is that although Hittites are referenced or mentioned in the biblical text, Uriah the Hittite, it's unlikely that these are Hittites from this period of history. Scholars have looked at Israelite or Hittite history and divided it into various eras. And so after around the 1200 BC, when the Hittite Empire collapses, there are still what are called some Neo-Hittites in the ancient Near East at this time, or after 1200. And so it's more likely that the Hittites that are referenced in the First Testament are more akin to the Neo-Hittites. In any case, keep that in mind as you read Vandy Merup's books on this era and the comparative literature. In Egypt, what we're going to focus on is the Amarna period. And the Amarna period is very significant for a number of reasons. One of the reasons has to do with the literature that has been preserved from this period. Um, there were a number of letters, around 300 letters, that were found in El Amarna. And these letters were correspondence preserved that record, um, again, correspondence between Canaanite city rulers and the Egyptian kings or the Egyptian pharaohs during this period. Um, Now, one of the things that these letters allow us to do is peer into the socio-political situation in Canaan in the middle of the second millennium, and specifically the 14th century. Um, and what we find is Canaan is a very kind of uh, dispersed, kind of heterogeneous society in which there's various centers of power: Jerusalem, Byblos, and some various others, Hatzor, Megiddo, um, cities that would ultimately become very important in Israelite history are also very important in this period. But these cities are ruled by various city rulers, various kind of it's not quite accurate to call them regional rulers, but kind of geographically independent rulers, all who are vying for the attention and the support of the Egyptian king. Um, what we don't have are most of the responses, if there were any, to these letters to the Canaanite city rulers. But again, what we find are kind of these independent cities that are vying for power, often at war with each other or conflict with each other, often um, asking the Egyptian king for support, complaining that he's not sending support quick enough. Um, and so, the very, very interesting socio-political situation. One of the things that we don't find from these letters is really any space to situate Israelites during this period. Um, this middle these middle centuries of the second millennium are a place in which some scholars have dated the Exodus, or to which scholars have dated the Exodus, somewhere around the 15th century. But if the Exodus happened, and even if the wilderness wandering period was, let's say, 40 years, there's no evidence or no indication that there's anything like an Israelite, or certainly not an Israelite conquest that would have happened before or during the 14th century. Again, these letters provide accurate historical information about what Canaan was like, and who the rulers were, and what people groups are around there. Now, if there's any connection, then it would be to a group that's called the Habiru or the Apiru. Um, and this group are kind of these, not necessarily nomads, but kind of brigands or outlaws that sometimes fight formally as soldiers, sometimes kind of live on the edge of society, uh, and then sometimes cause problems for some of these city rulers. But there's certainly nothing like an organized people group or organized military that's invading or conquering Canaan. And you'll if you read through all of the Amarna letters, and you can easily do so through William Moran's book, the Amarna Letters, which are those letters translated English. But if you read through all of them, you'll find numerous references to the Habiru or the Apiru. Now, the term Habiru or Apiru does seem to, at a face value, connect to the term Ivrit or Ivri, Hebrew. However, it's very, very difficult to defend or argue for a linguistic connection between the terms Habiru and Ivri, just simply because of the way that language changes, simply because of the spelling of the words. it's unlikely that the two words are linguistically connected, although at face value they seem to be so. Um, in any way, I want you to focus on what that socio-political situation looks like as you read some of these Amarna letters, as well as read about the Amarna letters in the Amarna period. Another significant uh, phenomenon that happens in Egypt during the Amarna period is the central or uh, the attempted centralization of Egyptian cults to Aten, the sun god. And again, you'll read through this. And some have connected this or may drawn some parallels between this and the rise or development of Yahwistic monotheism. So be aware of those connections as well. If you have any questions on this week's reading or this week's content, please go ahead and ask me. Again, use the general questions forum. I'll be here, and I look forward to meeting some of you in one-to-one phone conversations or video conversations here in the next week, and I'll be sending out that information tonight as well. Have a great week, and I look forward to your engagement in the course this week. Thanks. Bye.